Great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Context-Aware Data Quality Platform for Trusted Data webinar. My name is Seth Rao. I am the co-founder and CEO of FirstEigen, and my co-host is Anshuman Datta. He is the co-founder and CTO of FirstEigen as well. We are both based in Chicago. Now, what are the consequences of not having data quality tools that are aware of the context in which they are operating? Here is just one example of the many different verticals companies that we have worked with. This is a banking example that we see quite often. Fraud is on the rise. Money laundering is on the rise. Fraud detection softwares, money laundering detection softwares produce 90% false positives. There's a whole bunch of false negatives as well. These are the fraud that gets through the system without being detected. And the whole process is extremely expensive because it is manual. It needs manual reviews. It needs manual coding to look for fraud and look for money laundering and so on. So in a sense, not having a context-aware data validation tool is very expensive and it is very risky. So why is it that there are no context-aware data validation tools? Let's look at the maturity of the tools that are out there in the market. So on the y-axis, we see tools that can detect simple risk and multi-run risks. On the x-axis, you have the usual suspects. These are the legacy tools like Informatica, Talent, and Ab Initio and others. And the problem with them is they are extremely manual, and therefore they are very expensive to maintain, even to create validation rules and to maintain them. Now you have some recent entrants to this space, and they are better than the legacy tools. Some of them are, because they can look at multi-run risks and validate the data. Now the next gen tools, which is where truly the differentiators lie, can do multi-platform risk, and they are also context-aware AI agents. And DataBuck is the only software in that realm. It is intelligent. It is extensively trained on different use cases. So it's very expensive for just training it and maintaining it. It has taken months and months of training on different use cases like banking regulations, telecom analytics, churn, best practices, supply chain best practices, and so on. It can also be trained on specific company policies once installed in your environment. And the end result, it gives data validation, data quality rules that are very context relevant. And you get very few false positives. So this is truly differentiating next generation capability, context awareness. Now, where does this context awareness comes from? At a very base level, DataBuck is an AI agent that is being trained on the best practices of data quality and data trust. So out of the box, it knows what are the 6 dimensions of data quality. It look at your data and auto-recommend rules, very relevant for data quality. Now, we have taken that one level higher, and we have then trained it on specific content. It can be healthcare, can be financial services, manufacturing, telecom, and so on. And we can also train it in company policies, the past experiences in a company. And DataBuck also has the ability to auto-remediate low-trust data. Your level 1 support can be automated. You don't need a person doing some essential basic stuff. Why are there errors? Why can't software look up, automatically fill in the references, or if there are duplicates, remove the duplicates automatically? Of course, with a human hand behind it to ensure that it is always complying with companies' rules and policies. So DataBuck is very context aware because of these multiple layers of the pyramid, and it can also automate some of the remediation part. Now, let me give you a quick demo of the DataBuck. And I forgot to mention earlier on, please type in your questions in the chat window. We are monitoring it. And at the end of this, we'll go through the Q&A. All right, a quick demo of DataBuck. Now, this is the UI screen. As soon as we log in, we'll see an executive dashboard. The executive dashboard shows you at a very high level. How much data do you have? How much data are you monitoring? This is a demo server, so we don't go overboard. But in reality, you'll see the difference. You'll know how much dark data you have. More dark, more is the difference. More is your dark data. More untrustable is your data. Of these 19, how many of these are high trust tables? How many records are monitored, issues detected? And how is the data trust score of the enterprise looking over time? And as you scroll down, there are multiple other things that the dashboard will give. And DataBuck is made so you can customize the dashboard to get any view that you specifically are looking for, your team is specifically looking for. This is something out of the box, can be customized further. Now, put the hat of a data analyst, and you're being given a table to validate. How could you behave like a subject matter expert and get quality rules that are context aware? I'm going to show that to you in a second. We go to configure. We click on tables. See a bunch of tables that are already there. And the table that came to us is new. It's not there. So we're going to say add a table to validate. And we're going to pick a data source. We're going to pick the database. This already has multiple tables inside that have been run. And I'm going to pick something. I'm going to pick, let's say, a a disbursement table. It doesn't matter which one. If we're going to look at something different, this is just to give you a feel for what it does. Okay, we'll enter a nickname, demo/1, and pretty much that's it. We could give it a description and select some tags as appropriate. And now comes the interesting part. You could tell DataBuck, to behave like an expert in something. Now, for this demo, I'm going to pick it to behave like a banking regulations expert. You could have picked it as an insurance expert, the telecom expert, healthcare, whatever is it that you want. I'm picking a banking expert. Very important. We didn't have to tell the software, even within banking, what kind of data it was. Was it a transaction data? Was it a beneficiary ownership data, sales data, marketing data? Nothing. We just tell the software, this is behave like a banking expert, look at this table and tell us where the issues are. So we hit run. We're not going to wait for it to run. It's going to get queued up and it's going to run through a bunch of processes. It'll start profiling the data. Then it'll discover the patterns, trends, relationships that exist. It'll then map those relationships. And then it'll create a fingerprint and then recommend rules based on the fingerprint. And those rules are where the magic happens because of context awareness. I'm not going to wait for this. It's going to get queued up and executed. They're going to quickly go down and see some results. On the left, we click on Insights. Let's look at quality and trustability. We're going to see some results here. Let's go to tables. There are a few tables here, and we have a few more. Now, this lists all the tables, the data trust score, 0 to 100, 100 being best quality data. It gives it a high level, what kind of checks were done, what failed, and what passed. You're going to click on one of these tables to look at what DataBuck has discovered using this automated context-aware rule discovery capability it has. start with Buck's review. It is a review of what it sees in the data. Overall, the data trust score is 96.3. It says these are the business impacts as it sees it. Data reliability, high score indicates most data fields are accurate and consistent. Some of the key findings, strengths, issues identified. Few custom rules that have been put in have failed. This could lead to incorrect business decisions if it's unaddressed. So better, Mr. Analyst, better fix those issues. There are some values that have been anomalous values detected. This could lead to distorted financial reporting. And in summary, the data set is reasonably reliable. It needs some minor fixing. So it gives you a high-level overview of what it sees in the data. Now let's go to the summary page. It shows how the data trust score has tracked over time, the last 1 month. I'm going to hide this graph section and blow up these numbers. And it gives the different dimensions of data quality. What are the data trust scores for these different dimensions? And what the software has also done is for these different checks, it is auto-recommended. What are the critical data elements you should look for? And it is also auto-recommending what is the threshold and how many issues it is seeing. Now, we're going to cover that in a second. Where did all this magic come from? It starts with the profile. The software does a profile and converts that profile into a deep fingerprint. A fingerprint is a deep understanding of the patterns, trends, the relationships that exist within the data. And all of that is then translated into context-aware rules for data validation. So the rules are of 3 different classes, 4 different classes actually. There are some essential rules, advanced rules, custom rules are the rules that a user can write, just like you would do in any of the legacy tools like Informatica or Talent. And then you have Bug GPT rules. So Bug GPT rules are, we have used multiple language models, different types of language models to train DataBuck on the best practices and the regulations. Now, this being the banking data, DataBuck is relying on some of the banking regulations to refer some rules. So let's look at a couple of rules as an example. So let's look at rule number 38. Is there any other rule earlier? Okay, let's look at rule number 38. So this is a pretty complex rule. And there is a regulation. We'll refer to it in a second. DataBuck has used that regulation and is recommending that detect for customers with more than 3 check transactions in a day. And what is it that the regulation tells us? It is regulation 31 CFR 1020 point something, page number 7. We click on that and we get what exactly the regulation is. Now, if you realize this is something very interesting in multiple ways. One, the beauty is it is looked up at a regulation and it is translated with intelligence into a data validation rule applicable for your specific data set, for your specific column names. And on top of it, it takes and auto codes that for you. So if you agree with that, you don't even have to write the rule. It has auto coded it for you. And the additional layer of complexity in this is it is looking for transactions throughout a day. Nearly every data quality rule that you would see is usually it's a column-based rule. Now here, the software has taken a regulation and turned it into a row-based rule as well, which as data quality experts, you can realize it's a level advanced, a little bit more complex. Now let's look at rule number 31. Here it says, identify wire transactions without a international banking code from non-US countries. So here in the regulation, there is somewhere in the reference, it says that all this information must be available for all kinds of transactions. So it gives you an exact reference. It gives you an exact rule, because now it is context aware and behaves like a subject matter expert in banking. One last example from this data set, and then we'll jump to a different data set. Now here it says, it is recommending a rule that branch transactions must have US as a country code and a valid counterparty bank international code. Again, there is some regulation which refers to this. It has taken that, converted it into a rule. So the result of all this is a very context-aware set of rules for the users. Now, most or nearly every tool in the market will give you some version of essential rules and advanced rules. So the essential rules are what I would call as technical rules. Even this is pretty good automation. The legacy tools can't even do this. Now, software has auto-recommended a bunch of critical data elements to run null checks on. It's also recommended the thresholds. And as you scroll down, for default pattern checks, it is recommended a bunch of different critical data elements. It is also recommending what it sees from historical behavior as the patterns to be. And from historical behavior, it is also recommending what acceptable thresholds are. The user can always come in and edit this to what they feel is more appropriate. If you feel this should be a 1% threshold, even though historically it's been 10%, you can always edit the rule. And advanced rules are also very few tools can actually give. These are more getting slightly closer to the business user. The software is recommending that for, do a value anomaly check on this column and a distribution check on these two columns, and so on and so forth, and do a record count anomaly check if the number of records are okay, and so on. But the magic of DataBuck, a lot of it comes from the training it has received in different industry verticals. And this is an example of banking. Let's quickly jump. I want to show a different data set in a different domain. Now, this is telecom data. And this is a little bit of transaction data in telecom. We have trained it, DataBuck, on telecom's best practices. Just like last time, you start with seeing an aggregate view of the data set and close this. You see a bunch of data dimensions, the quality dimensions, and the data trust scores. And let's jump directly into the magic, which is where the data quality rules are. Now here, we have trained it, and let's look at the Buck GPT rules. As before, it also gives you essential rules. These are the technical rules. These are the bread, butter, block and tackle rules. Thus, in advance, slightly more business. And Buck GPT is where it behaves like the SME in telecom. Now, it is recommending a rule. For example, it says, identify high monthly charges in regions with low average data usage. So it's basically saying, make sure your data is correct. If there are people who fall in this category, either they are awesome customers, or they are at a high risk for a churn, or your data could be in error. To make any of the first two decisions, you have to make sure your data is correct. So it's flagging issues that you should double check for data quality before you pass it to your churn analytics or even fraud analytics. And like before, it has already coded it for you. You don't have to do any coding. This is zero code or low code. And let's look at another example, number 5. It says find mismatches between region and product code for specific plan tiers. A telecom company might offer a plan in the Northeast and maybe not in the West Coast. So it is it's looking for inter-column relationships. And these can come from a company's policies, a company's marketing plans. Software can be trained on any document that the company has or uses that should be a basis to validate data. So this becomes now a subject matter expert of companies' policies. and it'll recommend rules. And it uses these rules to give you an analysis of the data trust score. In this case, the data trust score was only 70. I would be very worried. So wrapping this up, I'm going to go back to my slides. What we have seen is when you bring in a context-aware data quality tool, this is a banking use case where we saw that there was a reduction of 40% reduction in alerts, 35% of time spent by the analyst was saved. In the case of fraud and money laundering detection, there was a 60% increase in accuracy. Even though the software itself was not doing the fraud detection or money laundering, garbage in, garbage out. So the fraud software and the AML software now had high quality data coming in. They were either rule-based or machine learning models. With high quality data, those models performed really, really well. Software was very quick to deploy, under 4 systems, under 4 weeks, with no core system changes. So huge benefit to both alert reduction, cost reduction, and increase in accuracy. So this is with one of the banks we had worked with. So in essence, what are DataBuck's superpowers? These are 4 superpowers, the way we see it. It's trained on data quality's best practices. So it'll give you very relevant and impactful checks as applicable to data quality. It has further been trained, pre-trained, on use case content, whether it is banking regulations, telecom best practices, or supply chain best practices, and so on. So it'll give you validation rules, which are very specific to that use case, as you saw in the telco case and in the banking case, very specific to that use case. And it can further be trained on companies' policies. So after learning companies' policies and also companies' past experiences, if the company has seen certain types of data quality issues in the past, the software learns from that and looks for those kinds of data issues if it's commonly occurring. So it learns from your company policies and also past experiences. So you essentially have a very powerful tool that is well-trained, very focused, and extremely relevant for your specific company and use case. And on top of it, DataBuck is pretty much the only tool that can also do a cross-platform reconciliation. When you're moving data from between different platforms, and you want to make sure there is no loss, there is no corruption of data, you need cross-platform capabilities. And also cross-platform when you're validating data from data quality perspective. And DataBuck brings all of that to bear. So with that, I'm going to stop and take questions. Look for clean data, because that is your first and your best defense against bad analytics. So validated the power of AI agents, and we can do that by customizing the validation. Datta, with that, are there any questions we can take?
So first question is, do they bring in their own LLM, or DataBuck provides its own LLM?
Great point. So I think one of the underlying questions behind that question is, what is the privacy of a company's data? Your data is completely private. It does not leave your firewalls. Now, the first 2 bullets that you see here on the right side, the DataBuck comes in pre-trained on those. We use multiple different kinds of language models, not just one. And then when we train it on your company's policies and on your company's data, the software resides within your environment, within your firewalls. We bring in our specialized language model, or it can also use, if you have a language model that you're comfortable with, and we have worked with companies where they have agreements with either OpenAI or Gemini to use their model exclusively, still saving and conserving the privacy of their data, DataBuck can use that as well. The goal is to make sure your data never leaves your environment without your permission, and it never will.
Second question,
Next.
can you tell us more about no-code data connectivity?
Absolutely. So data connectivity, if I'm going to go back to here. So let's look at this. I'm going to show configure. And in configure, we can connect to different data sources. There's a bunch of data sources that you can connect to. We support all the modern data sources that you want. You just pick and choose what you want and give it the required information, access credentials, and DataBuck can immediately access all your tables and files within that. So you don't need to write any code at all. And once the connectivity is established and DataBuck accesses those tables, you can pick and choose an entire database or schema or just a single table to validate. It's pretty powerful. It is highly scalable. We have worked with companies where they've literally said, okay, here are 1,000 tables to be validated. They don't have to do it one by one. So massively scalable. And it's also scalable in terms of the volume of data. We have worked with tables that have tens of billions of rows. DataBuck has also worked with table that has a few thousand rows and works on Spark, highly blisteringly fast and scalable. Next question.
Next question is, how does it deal with schema changes? Like if you
Great
discover
question.
the rule and new columns got added, does it
Yes.
automatically adapt or do they need to configure anything?
So the first thing it does, there are two steps to the process. First is a recognition that there is a fundamental change in your data. Either a column is missing or a column has been added. And in the profile, so what I didn't show is the profile. So in the profile, actually, let's go back to the summary here. So when you see when it looks for profile changes, it is also looking to see if there was a change in the schema of your column itself. So it'll let you know that there is a change. And then you could add appropriately, because at that point, once your column is changed, you'll probably need to add new rules, or you will, if it's a new column, then somebody put it there for a reason. So at that point, you can decide how you want to deal with it. But you will be informed of changes in schema and also fundamental changes in the profile of your table or file.
Okay, two more questions. One is, does the tool auto-define the population or the target of the rule or just the rule?
Beautiful, beautiful question. So that's a question, that's an area called microsegmenting. So every data fundamentally is very heterogeneous. There is no monolithic data. If you think about loans that a bank processes every night, a loan that comes from Manhattan, New York is going to look fundamentally, dramatically different than from rural Illinois. So you cannot apply the same rules. And some of the sales data that we have looked at from pharmaceutical companies literally have 12,500 subsets within a data, so many different microsegments, and they all need different kinds of rules. Therefore, DataBuck auto-recognizes these inherently differently behaving subsets and microsegments of data, and it recommends rules. It goes ahead and does the microsegmenting, and then it further defines rules for those specific microsegments. The user is always in the driver's seat. The user can come back and say, well, rural Illinois versus urban Illinois, I don't want to create any distinction. I want to have the same set of rules. You can change the way the microsegmenting is done. So the user is completely in control 100% of the times. Software takes you most of the way through to the end. You can do the final tweaks. And
Okay.
one last question before we end.
Yeah. So what is the FedRAMP status or plan? So let me answer that. So DataBuck works in a hybrid mode, means it doesn't require, you don't require to send the data to a larger cloud. It comes with its own model that you can put it in your environment. So we don't have to necessarily use the cloud environment. For now, we are not FedRAMP certified. And if there are enough customers requesting it, then of course we will think about going through the process. But that's pretty much Seth, is the list of questions.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. If you would like a copy of the deck or a copy of the video, link to the video, please write to us from your corporate emails, and we'll be happy to share. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.